English Snacks.
Hey everyone, welcome back to English Snacks, the podcast where we serve you short, tasty bites of the English language. I'm Michael, here as always with the wonderful Kendra. Kendra, how are you today?
I'm really well, thank you. I have to say, I've been excited about today's episode since you told me the topic. I already knew the basic fact, but when I started looking into it, it went so much deeper than I expected.
Which part got you first?
The moment I realized I had used one of today's words this morning, before I even got out of bed, without thinking about it, and that word did not exist in English until a specific person invented it about 400 years ago.
And that person, one single human being, is responsible for somewhere between a few hundred and possibly over 1,000 words that are now completely ordinary parts of everyday English.
One person. Words that you and I use without a second thought. Words that feel like they have always existed.
And that person is William Shakespeare.
William Shakespeare, the playwright, the poet, the man whose plays most of us studied in school and pretended to understand.
Pretended to understand is doing a lot of work in that sentence. But here is the did you know moment for today. Did you know that the first recorded use of words like bedroom, lonely, eyeball, addiction, manager, fashionable, and swagger all appear in Shakespeare's plays?
Which, when you list them like that, sounds impossible because those words feel ancient. They feel like they came with the language.
And that is what makes this so fascinating. We're going to talk about where these words came from, how Shakespeare built them, what they meant when he first used them, what they mean now, and what this tells us about how English actually grows.
Because it's not just a history lesson. There is real, practical vocabulary in this episode. Words you will use this week. Words that will make your English sound more natural and expressive.
Exactly. Today is about one man who added to that vocabulary in a way nobody before or since has ever matched. All right, let's start with the man himself, because context makes the words land differently. William Shakespeare was born in Stratford-upon-Avon, England. He was a playwright, someone who writes plays, and a poet. He wrote 37 plays and 154 sonnets.
And those plays were not just read quietly at home. They were performed publicly in theaters like the Globe in London, in front of audiences of hundreds of people, sometimes thousands.
Ordinary people, working people, not just scholars or the wealthy. Shakespeare's audience included people who came in off the street and stood in front of the stage and listened for hours, which means the language in those plays had to be vivid, immediate, and emotionally powerful enough to hold a crowd.
And when Shakespeare needed a word that didn't exist, a word that expressed exactly what he wanted to convey, he made one.
He made one. And the English language in the late 1500s was changing very fast. It was absorbing words from Latin, from French, from Italian, from everywhere. And Shakespeare was right in the middle of that creative explosion, writing constantly, performing publicly, and experimenting with language every single day.
Curious. So how exactly did he create new words? Because you can't just make something up and expect people to accept it.
Well, sometimes you can, especially if the new word fills a gap. If it describes something that previously had no neat single word, and Shakespeare had a few specific techniques he used over and over.
Walk us through them.
Well, the first technique, adding a prefix to an existing word. A prefix is a small group of letters you attach to the front of a word to change or extend its meaning.
Like meaning not. Unhappy means not happy. Unknown means not known. Uncomfortable means not comfortable.
And Shakespeare used exactly that pattern. In Romeo and Juliet, he wrote the word uncomfortable. Before that play, that word does not appear in written English. The word comfortable existed, but uncomfortable, that specific construction, Shakespeare was the first to write it down.
So every time you say, this chair is uncomfortable, or that conversation was really uncomfortable,
Shakespeare was the first to write it down, but language stuck immediately.
that is genuinely mind-bending. What is the second technique?
The second technique, turning a noun into a verb or a verb into a noun, switching the job a word does in a sentence.
Give us an example.
The word elbow. Elbow was a noun, the joint in the middle of your arm. Everyone knew the word, but Shakespeare used it as a verb in Measure for Measure. Elbow him away, meaning push someone away using your elbow.
Oh, so to elbow someone, like she elbowed her way through the crowd.
Shakespearean construction. Shakespeare decided this word can do more than describe a body part. It can describe a movement. And the language agreed.
And this technique, using a noun as a verb, is incredibly common in modern English. We text someone, we email a document, we Google something.
Exactly. Google is a noun that became a verb through popular use. Shakespeare was doing that 400 years ago. The instinct is the same. Language finds shortcuts wherever it can.
Okay, I want to get to the actual words now, because I think hearing the stories behind specific words is where this episode really becomes something special.
Let's do it. I want to start with one that I think will genuinely surprise our listeners. The word lonely.
Lonely, as in the feeling of being alone and sad?
That specific word, lonely, first appears in written English in Shakespeare's play, Coriolanus, written around 1608. The character describes himself as isolated from everyone around him, and Shakespeare uses the word lonely to describe that state.
So, before 1608, in the entire history of the English language, there was no word lonely?
There were words for being alone, solitary, alone, isolated, but lonely, that precise emotional texture, the sadness of aloneness, Shakespeare was the first to write it. And from that moment, it never went away.
That is extraordinary, because lonely is one of those words that feels like it should be as old as humanity, like the feeling and the word must have arrived together.
And that is the most interesting thing about it. The feeling existed before the word. People were lonely. They just didn't have that specific word for it. And then Shakespeare gave it to them.
And from a vocabulary perspective, lonely is an adjective. I feel lonely. It was a lonely walk home. The noun form is loneliness. The loneliness was overwhelming. And lonely is more emotionally loaded than alone. You can be alone and perfectly happy, but lonely always carries the sadness, always implies something missing.
That is such a useful distinction for learners. Choosing between alone and lonely changes the whole emotional register of a sentence.
Okay, next word. And this one is going to land very differently. The word bedroom.
Bedroom? Like the room where you sleep?
The room where you sleep. That word, so ordinary, something you've said 1,000 times, first appears in A Midnight Summer's Night Dream by Shakespeare, written around 1600.
But what did people call it before? What did you say if you wanted to tell someone where you slept?
You would have said the chamber or the sleeping chamber. Chamber was the standard word for a private room. Bedroom, the simple combination of bed plus room, so obvious in retrospect, Shakespeare was the first to put it together in writing.
It's so funny to think about. A world without the word bedroom. Just people sleeping in chambers.
And bedroom is a compound noun, two nouns joined together to make one, bed plus room. English does this constantly. Football, sunflower, doorbell, birthday. Shakespeare was applying a pattern already in the language. He just applied it somewhere nobody had before. Exciting! Next one, and this one has a really interesting journey. The word manager.
Manager? Like someone who manages a team or a business?
Shakespeare used the word manager in Love's Labour's Lost, written around 1997. He used it to describe someone who oversees or organizes, someone who manages others.
So before the 1990s, there was no English word for what a manager does?
The concept existed, people organized and led other people, but the specific word manager, in that professional administrative sense, Shakespeare gets credit for the earliest written English record.
Which means every job title that includes the word manager, general manager, marketing manager, project manager, they all trace back to a word Shakespeare used in a comedy about love and wordplay.
Which is a genuinely wonderful piece of irony. And the verb is to manage. I manage a team. Can you manage this? How are you managing? That last one is very common in British English. It means, how are you coping? Are you handling things okay?
And management is the noun form. Good management is essential. She has excellent management skills. The word family, manage, manager, management is everywhere in professional English, and it all started with Shakespeare needing a word.
Okay, I want to bring up one that I find personally fascinating because of how the meaning has shifted, the word addiction.
Tell us about it.
Shakespeare used addiction in Henry V, written around 1599. The Bishop of Canterbury says that the king's knowledge of religion was preferable to his previous addiction.
And over the next 4 centuries, the word shifted. Gradually, it became associated with compulsive behavior, with substances, with inability to stop. Today, addiction almost always implies something harmful and difficult to escape.
And this is a really important English lesson. Words change meaning over time. The technical term is semantic shift. Semantic means relating to meaning, and addiction is one of the clearest examples. The word Shakespeare used and the word we use today share the same spelling, but not quite the same meaning.
The noun today, addiction. He struggled with an addiction to social media. The adjective, addictive. This podcast is addictive, which we hope is true.
We are counting on it. Okay, one more that I think is going to make people smile. The word swagger.
Swagger.
Swagger, which today means a bold, confident walk or attitude. Someone who carries themselves like they know they're impressive.
Shakespeare used swagger in A Midnight Summer Night and Henry IV. He used it to describe someone who moved in a boastful, arrogant way. It had a slightly negative connotation originally. Too much confidence, showing off.
And now swagger is almost completely positive. You say someone has swagger and it's a compliment. They're cool, confident, they carry themselves well.
And this is another semantic shift, but in the opposite direction from addiction. Addiction shifted from neutral to negative. Swagger shifted from slightly negative to positive. Language moves in every direction.
Swagger is a noun and a verb. Noun, she walked into the room with pure swagger. Verb, he swaggered across the stage. And in recent decades, it became shortened in informal speech to swag, meaning style, coolness, effortless confidence.
And Shakespeare. If he could see how his word evolved through centuries of English, through popular culture globally, might be either delighted or horrified.
Probably both, simultaneously.
Okay, vocabulary drill time. I'll say the word, you give the definition, we both give an example sentence, and we point out the grammar. I want listeners to leave today with these fully locked in.
Let's go. Lonely.
Adjective. The sadness of being without company or connection, not just alone, but emotionally isolated. She sat by the window feeling lonely on a Sunday afternoon.
Even in a crowded room, you can feel completely lonely. Grammar note, the noun is lonely next. The key distinction, alone is neutral. Lonely always carries sadness.
Bedroom.
Compound noun, the room in a home used for sleeping. She decorated the bedroom with plants and warm lighting.
How many bedrooms does the apartment have? Grammar note, bedroom works as a modifier. Bedroom window, bedroom door. You put it before another noun to specify which room. Manager.
Noun, a person responsible for overseeing a team, department, or operation. She was promoted to senior manager after 3 years with the company.
I need to speak to the manager. Key grammar, manage followed by to plus a verb means to succeed at something difficult. I managed to finish on time. Different from I managed the project, which means you were in charge of it. Addiction.
Noun, a compulsive, often harmful dependence on a substance, activity, or behavior. Social media addiction is a growing concern.
Grammar note, addictive describes the thing. Addicted describes the person. Coffee is addictive. I'm addicted to coffee. Same root, different direction. Swagger.
Noun and verb. Confidence so visible it shows in how someone moves. She walked into the presentation with complete swagger.
Joining. He swaggered through the door like he owned the place. Grammar note. Swagger as a verb takes no object. You simply swagger. It is intransitive. The action doesn't pass to anything else.
You know what strikes me about all of these words? They are deeply human. Lonely, bedroom, manager, addiction, swagger. These are not technical words. They are words about how we feel, where we live, what we do, and how we move through the world.
And I think that tells you something about Shakespeare as a writer. He wasn't inventing words to show off. He was inventing words because he needed to say something true about human experience, and the existing vocabulary wasn't precise enough.
The words that survived, the ones still living in English 400 years later, are the ones that filled a real gap, that said something nobody had found the exact right word for yet.
Which is also a really beautiful model for language learning. You don't collect words to impress people. You collect words because each one gives you a more precise way of telling the truth about your experience.
The word lonely exists because Shakespeare needed to describe something true, and it survived because everyone who heard it thought, yes, that is exactly the word. I needed that.
And every learner of English has moments like that too. Moments where you find a word and think, I've been feeling this for years and now I finally have the word for it. That is the real gift of vocabulary.
Okay, your challenge this week. Pick one of today's words, lonely, bedroom, manager, addiction, swagger, and tell us a short story or sentence using it naturally. But here's the twist. Tell us the word in your own first language too. Does your language have an exact equivalent? Is there something your language does differently? Drop it in the comments below.
Because language comparison is one of the most fascinating things to explore, and your comments always teach us something too. We genuinely love reading them.
Encouraging. If today made you feel like English is alive in a way you hadn't quite felt before, please like, subscribe, and share this episode with someone learning English, because the story of how this language grew is the story of how to understand it.
Until next time, keep listening, keep practicing, and remember, every word you're learning today has a story behind it, and some of those stories started on a stage in London 400 years ago in front of a crowd who didn't know they were about to inherit new words. Take care, everyone.
Bye for now. See you in the next episode.